Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you have reached Firebranded, the Catholic commentary war machine built for impact. I am your host, TJ Haynes, the undisputed technician of the truth, and tonight we're talking about Catholics falling down a rabbit hole. Bye-bye, baby. Catholics, you don't want to fall down a rabbit hole, man. You got to pay attention. You got to keep your eyes open. Keep your mind straight. Keep your mind sharp. There are Catholics falling down rabbit holes all the time. The Holy Father is a heretic. The Mass is stupid. Now, you might think I'm not a radical traditionalist, so that doesn't apply to me. Oh, let me tell you, my friend, this lack of sharpness is universal throughout the church. It does apply to you. So we're going to talk about a couple of real-life examples, and I'm going to tell you what you need to watch out for. We're also going to talk about the weirdest excommunication story I have never heard. That's coming up in the middle of the episode. I also want to talk to you about what do you do when the weight is just too heavy? The weight is just too great and you just can't carry this cross anymore, this cross we call Catholic. What do you do when you need to revitalize your faith? I have a couple of tips for you that I'm going to share with you after that music hits the road, Jack. Once again, thank you for joining me. This is August 16th. This is August 16th in the year of our Lord, 2026. I can't believe August is halfway through. I have to tell you the truth. I want it to just stay August. Just stay August. Do you know why? Because as the days and weeks progress, we're getting closer and closer to winter. I have a Canadian in the chat room, Elizabeth Sutcliffe. By the way, check out her YouTube channel, Warriors for Life. She does great work. And she's not just like some ordinary old lady from down the road. This is her ministry. It's not just a YouTube ministry. This is her work. So check out Warriors for Life on YouTube. Anyway, for a Canadian, this is probably nonsense, but I have grown to really hate the cold. I mean, I literally am dreading the cold returning, which is funny because when I was younger, I used to love the cold, but the winters have gotten just too damn harsh, and I can't take it anymore. So I wanted to just stay August. I have to tell you the truth. I just get tired of the shivering and the bundling up, and I just can't. I just can't. God, why did you invent winter? Why did you invent cold weather? What is the point of that? I don't understand. What's the point of cold weather? Mosquitoes in the summer. What's the point of mosquitoes? Just explain that to me. That's going to be me. I'm going to be the biggest bitcher and moaner on the line at the resurrection because I'm going to line up my list of things I need to ask Jesus about. And Jesus is going to be like, my son, let's talk, my good and faithful servant, let's talk about your life a little bit. And I'm going to be like, no. Before we start getting into that, I need to know why mosquitoes. Why? That's going to take you 5 minutes to explain to me. We can put off the judgment for just a second, just a few minutes. Also, why winter? Why? Make that make sense to me. It doesn't matter anymore. Winter is over. This is the resurrection. It's the end of time. I know, but I still need it to make sense. I need it to make sense. Listen, I'm probably bound for purgatory. I'm probably going to spend some time in there. I want to at least not have to think about this during purgatory. I want this matter settled, resolved. I never have to think about it again. Why winter and why mosquitoes? Go. That's how it's going to be for me. You'll know where I am in the line at the resurrection because I'll be the guy constantly bitching and moaning about how long the line is and how slowly it is moving. Hello to those of you catching me live in the chat room and here on YouTube, and I thank you very much for joining me. Now, very likely, anyone who's happened upon this video has already left. Excuse me a second. Anyone who's found this video has probably already left. They say you should get to your point inside of 15 seconds, but I can tell you the truth. No matter what you do, my head could explode and reconstitute in 15 seconds, and people are still going to swipe away from this damn video. So you know what? Bafangul. I'm going to do the show that I want to do. So I wanted to open the show with a little tomfoolery. So it has been an interesting week. I'll tell you my routine. this is not babbling. This is part of the show, okay? My routine is usually in the mornings after I've done my prayers, after I do my shower, get ready for work, etc. I spend a little time with some coffee and I peruse around Twitter a little bit. If you follow me on Twitter, real TJ Haynes, everywhere on socials, real TJ Haynes. If you follow me on Twitter, you will have noticed that I usually do most of my posting in the mornings. Or maybe you haven't noticed. That's okay too. And it's interesting because I don't know if it's me or what, but I feel like people get stupid toward the evening. Whenever I've perused Twitter, and maybe it's me, maybe I'm the one who gets stupid by the evening. Whenever I peruse Twitter or X in the evening hours, I have no idea what the hell anybody is talking about. It sounds like a bunch of words. It sounds like a word jumble. Every post is like a word jumble in that this is a real tweet, but we've scrambled up the words. Not the letters, just the words. The words are real. You don't have to reconstruct the letters. The letters are right in the right place, but the words are all in the wrong place. Some of the words that should be long next to each other in real sentences and paragraph statements, some of the words that should be together are together, but most of them are not. So it almost looks like a real statement, a real claim, a real thought in the post, but you're like, I have no idea what that means. Go to the next one, same thing. So and maybe it's just me, or maybe everybody on X is stupid in the evening hours. I don't know. But that's usually when I do my Twittering. It's in the morning. And sometimes it's aggravating. Sometimes I don't want to start my day that way. Usually, I'll tell you, when I Twitter in the mornings, it's really because I want to look at some news headlines. Because I do find I'm a little bit more on top of things. It's awful to have to say this, to have to admit this, but I'm a little bit more on top of things through Twitter's news thing than I am when I go to like a secular news site. Twitter is really on top of it. I don't necessarily mean the tweeters, but Twitter itself. Okay, usually the tweeters they extend way beyond the facts and stuff like that. You can't rely on what individual tweeters say, but the coverage that finds its way on Twitter first, it's pretty on top of it. So anyway, I usually don't want to start my morning that way because Twitter can be so intellectually and spiritually corrosive. That's not how you want to start your day. But I have noticed a pattern over the past several weeks in that it really does help me to keep my finger on the pulse of the faithful on the internet. And I guess the human culture on the internet. Obviously, what's on Twitter or any other social platform isn't an apples to apples reflection of what's in the world, because what's on social media is concentrated, right? It's condensed. I get that. I wasn't born yesterday. But still, it gives you an idea of thought patterns. It gives you an idea of the cultural zeitgeist. And sometimes the cultural zeitgeist is a Catholic cultural zeitgeist. And I do enjoy that very much, not just as a curious mind, but as an evangelizer. I like knowing where the culture in the church is, or at least this segment of it. So I've noticed something. This is one of the patterns I've been picking up. There are well-meaning, well-intentioned, very reasoned Catholics who are flirting with a rabbit hole. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's very easy to fall down a rabbit hole. I know this from experience. I've fallen down one great big fat rabbit hole long time ago where I was rolling with sedevacantists. I won't go through all this history. I'll just tell you briefly, for a couple of years, I was very, very SETI inclined. I just hadn't crossed the line yet to saying the Mass is not valid and the Pope is not the real Pope. I hadn't crossed that line yet, and I was still attending my regular Mass just in case it's still the valid Mass. And I had fallen down that rabbit hole pretty damn far. Not fast and not instantly, but once the slip and slide started, it was pretty damn far. So I know this from experience, how Catholics can be led along by dishonest media, by dishonest Catholics. Some of them in the hierarchy. Some of them in independent Catholic media. Some of them are just your neighbors in the pews, who themselves fell down a rabbit hole because they were led there by somebody else. The rabbit hole looks something like this. Pope Francis is a heretic. Well, he said this and this and this and this and this and this. And now let's say it's 5 things. You get evidence of 5 things Pope Francis said or did. And they are 5 things that are a little bit surprising to you as a Catholic. Now you pick up those 5 crumbs, leading you to the rabbit hole. You are now 5 steps closer to that rabbit hole. The rabbit hole itself, now let me back up, because this is part of what I want to explain tonight. And I'm going to show you some examples. I'm going to roll some video. I'm going to tell you some interesting story about a very strange excommunication. But first, let me set this up. So let's say you get these 5 things that Pope Francis said, and you just accept them on a sort of intuitive level, right? They speak to your emotions. They're shocking, right? Pope Francis said, "Who am I to judge?" Shocking, right? You haven't applied much reason to it. Maybe you hadn't heard of this before. Happens all the time, right? I haven't heard that the Pope said this. Well, what you also didn't receive was the context. What you also didn't receive was the application. What was he talking about? Who was he speaking to? What was he trying to communicate? For instance, I'll give you one that really still gets under my skin. When the Holy Father, Pope Francis, said that, I may be paraphrasing here, but not by much, when he said all religions lead to God. Well, there is a truth in that, but that's an extraordinarily reckless statement. You could even consider it flat out incorrect. I think I know what he was trying to say. Okay, and Fulton Sheen had said similar things. Okay, one example, I think I said this on another show. Fulton Sheen once said, when we're looking at world religions, every religion, whether it's Islam, Judaism, paganism, whatever, everything true in it, this is Fulton Sheen, everything true in it comes from God. Everything false in it comes from man. True. That's true. Can all religions lead to God? Well, if you're following what's true in them, yes, it can lead to God. Does that lead to salvation? It may or it may not. Can it lead to God in that it leads you closer to the Catholic Church, the church that Christ established? Yeah, I've seen it a million times. Happens all the time. Yes. There are people who, in the practice of definitely Protestantism, right, as they try to get deeper into the practice of Christianity in their Protestant faith, something happens that leads them closer and closer to Catholicism. Happens all the time. It also happens with Jews, and believe it or not, it also happens with Muslims. Not as often. They're probably more rare in my experience, but it happens. I've seen it happen. The closer you get to truth, the closer you get to God. What happens once that takes place, your closeness to God? Maybe you start to explore a little deeper. Maybe you start to follow the truth wherever you feel you see it, right? Where you feel let's say you're a Muslim and you're following the truth that comes from God, right? Error comes from man. And you arrive at a truth of, let's say, the Blessed Virgin Mary and her virtue. And that sparks an interest in how Catholics think about the Blessed Virgin Mary and her virtue. You start to wonder about Catholic theology surrounding her being the mother of Jesus Christ. And let's say because you're a Muslim, you only see Jesus as a prophet. Okay, but still you want to look deeper into that. You see? Can all religions lead to God in one way or another? Yes, but I still thought that was a very reckless thing for the Pope to say because it sounds like all religions are equally valuable, and that is not true. So you approach these 5 things that Pope Francis said, and it leads you 5 steps closer to the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is the church is in crisis. The Holy Father is an apostate. His successor, Pope Leo, is probably an apostate. Very sweet guy, but he's probably an apostate. Vatican II wasn't wrong, but the way it was implemented by the church was reckless and stupid. That's not true. Who implemented Vatican II? Well, it was some people in the church, and it was also some people in the laity, enabled by, let's say, local pastors and so on. So that's a cultural issue. That wasn't the church issue. Okay. Vatican II wasn't wrong, but it was implemented badly. Then you start thinking, well, it wasn't that it was implemented badly. According to things that I've heard online, Vatican II was wrong, and it really needs to be reversed. There's the rabbit hole. There's the rabbit hole. And this and that and the other thing is not reverent. And this and that and the other thing is a grave and mortal sin. All these things are likely going to be incorrect, by the way. And this and that and the other thing is heresy. I just had an exchange with someone on Twitter just recently. Unbelievable to me. Again, this is part of the show. This is not me babbling. I'm not going to name him because I don't want... I regard this person as sort of a poor soul, very well-intentioned, very enthusiastic. Very well-intentioned, very enthusiastic, but very wrong. I think he wants to do the right thing, but anyway. And he was saying, well, I'm paraphrasing here. He was essentially saying that because we removed Latin from the Mass, we've essentially ruptured from sacred tradition. And he uses all of these selective quotations from the Council of Trent to demonstrate this. Rabbit hole. He's fallen down a rabbit hole. I explained to him methodically, these quotes don't mean what you say. Here's what these quotes mean. Here's what this terminology means. And I'll give you the essential truth here, okay? The language of Latin is a sacred language. It's the official mother tongue of the church, okay? But that is not to be understood this way. Language has to be in the Mass. It ought to be in the Mass because the church says so, okay? The church instructs that there should be some Latin in the Mass. It's appropriate, it's good, and so on. But the language of Latin is not essential to the Roman Rite. The Roman Rite is what sacred tradition is. Sacred tradition is the Roman Rite. The Roman Rite is part of sacred tradition. Latin is not. So Latin, the use of Latin in the liturgy can change. In the Council of Trent, the Council Fathers said that it was anathema to suggest that the Vulgate, the vernacular, the common tongue, should be used everywhere in every liturgy. Well, the way the Fathers frame that is basically this. This is a disciplinary declaration. It is not sacred tradition. The ordinary form, for them, it was the Latin Mass. The ordinary form of the Mass is in Latin. For you to arbitrarily remove that, I don't think they used the word heresy, but it's anathema. You should be thrown out of the church for that or something. Okay? It's a violation. Well, yeah, for them it was, because the ordinary ordinary form of the Mass in that time used Latin in the liturgy. That's why it would be criminal, I'm using the word criminal, to remove it. But the way they frame the language makes it very, very clear that this is not doctrine, this is not dogma, and it is not sacred tradition. It's very apparent, practically explicit, that this is a discipline statement, a statement of discipline. That means future magisteria are not bound by it. The magisterium can say, we're going to do the Mass everywhere in the Vulgate, the common tongue of a region, from now on. The magisterium totally, even Trent has said this, the magisterium has sole authority to do that. You understand? I explained this theological methodology to him, the person on Twitter. I explained the terminology and so on. Not only did he hold on to his error, he decided it was important for him to do a video explaining to Catholics why it's sinful for the church to have removed Latin from the Mass. I explained Latin is not sacred tradition. The Mass used to be celebrated in Greek. It was changed to Latin. Greek predates Latin in the liturgy. But it was still a Roman Rite liturgy, because the Roman Rite liturgy is what is part of sacred tradition. Greek is not, Latin is not. For those of you who don't know me, shame on you. You should know me by now. But I'm not against Latin. I'm a big fan of the Latin language and the use of Latin in the church. I have no problem with Latin. But it's important that we think about these things with the mind of the church, in accord with the mind of the church, not independent of the mind of the church, which that poor soul, in my opinion, was doing. He was thinking of these things independently from how the church thinks of these things. Rabbit hole. And not only is it a rabbit hole, but he's dragging other people down with him. Unbelievable. Not really unbelievable anymore, but sort of unbelievable to me. So I'm going to call your attention to something else that could potentially be a rabbit hole that many of you might fall into. Okay, just give me a second here as I get this on my screen. Wow, wow, holy cow. It's a miracle. I did not think that was going to work out as quickly and as simply as it did. I usually cover up names, folks, but I didn't make the time to do it. I kind of forgot, but whatever. If you do find this guy on Twitter, please don't be rude or mean or anything like that. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but he's wrong. That's okay. All right? That's okay that he's wrong. And some people might look at what he said and you're saying, he's not wrong. I think he's right. Okay, God bless you, whatever. I disagree, but that's fine. The point is, I don't want to embarrass people. I just didn't. It didn't occur to me that I have to save this and cover up his name first. But don't treat him like shit if you see him online. Anyway, you know how I actually encountered this guy? I was looking at a news story. It was a Catholic-focused news story on X, and what the platform does is it takes you through. First, it explains the story, the headline, and then it takes you through a few tweets, a few posts of people talking about it, which is very entertaining to watch. And then it takes you through a couple of accounts who have posted about this, right? 4 or 5 accounts, and then it takes you through some more tweets. He was one of the accounts that commented. So as I was scrolling down, I saw his account, because usually the platform recommends you follow these people who have been involved in this conversation. And it said, Deacon Nick Connolly has blocked you. I was like, blocked me? I don't even know who this guy is. I've never seen this guy before in my life. He blocked me? What did I do? What did I say? I kind of don't care, but what's up with that? So Deacon Nick Donnelly blocked me. Okay, whatever. And then I thought, why would he have blocked me? So I went to his account to look at some of his posts, and I thought, oh, I see why he blocked me. We're definitely not aligned theologically. So let me read this to you. But this was an interesting post because as I'm looking at this, I see sensationalism in it. However, looking at it in a way that's fair-minded, I feel like most Catholics will look at this, even if they're very balanced Catholics, most Catholics will look at that and say, well, he does have a good point. But he doesn't. He doesn't. But I think fair, rational, balanced Catholics will look at that and say, yeah, he kind of has a point. And in my response about that post, I even tried to be fair-minded and express that. I think a lot of Catholics will look at that and agree with it, right? But he doesn't. He's down the rabbit hole. And I'm going to explain to you why. First, let's read the tweet. Under Pope Leo, sodomites, welcome. Communists, welcome. Pro-abortion celebrities, welcome. Female schismatic archbishops, I think he's talking about the Archbishop of Canterbury there, welcome, because Pope Leo met with her and I don't know, they had a party, a tea party, or they went to a dance together. I don't remember. Anyway, female schismatic archbishops, welcome. Adherents of false religions, welcome. Boy, he includes everything but Martians from outer space in this list. Now, Freemasons, welcome. And I'm going to talk about that part too, the Freemasons part in this episode. Now, Freemasons, welcome. But the Catholics of the SSPX are unwelcome and excommunicated. Tell me again how this isn't a new religion masquerading as the Catholic Church. Ooh. No matter what he said in that post, how agreeable it might have been, how fact-based it might have been, which it is not. No matter what he said in that post, once I get to the fact that he's reposting something from Lie Site News, you've already lost me. I really should have just started there. But once you get to this is a new religion masquerading as the Catholic Church, you've lost me. Now, I'm going to go through what the problem is with this post. But I do want to say this, and this is the devil hard at work here in this deception. I have done shows in the past. Liz, if she's still in the chat room, will remember this. One of the episodes I did, and I've done 3 episodes like this in my history. I have done episodes talking about how there is a true church and a false church. And a lot of people are in the false church. I am not saying the Church of Vatican II is a false church. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that within the culture of the church, there are people who just don't quite get it. And those are the people, now they can be rational, reasoned, normal, all that stuff. They're not extremists to the right or to the left, normal. Even those people are risking being members of the false church. What is a false church? A false church is something that's Catholic-ish, but it jettisons some important things, like it's important, not important, it's necessary. It's required that we go to Mass every Sunday and holy days of obligation. Folks, there are plenty of very, very good people. I'm not attacking anyone. There are very good people who are very nice, very kind, maybe very charitable even, who think it's not important to go to Mass. False church. They think, well, as long as I'm nice, that's really what God wants from me. And let's say, and I know many like this, they're very nice, they give their time, effort, or money to charities, and so on. And just morally, ethically, everything about them, they're just great people. But they think that's enough. They don't have to go to church. False church. Then there are people who are at Mass every day, and they think they're covered. They don't have to live the faith that they profess outside of Mass. False church. And then there are the extremists. Extreme to the right, extreme to the left. They're further left than the church goes. They're further right than the church is. False church. That's what I'm talking about. And that false church is a real one. Deacon Donnelly appears to be claiming that the state of the church, the whole state of the church today is a false church. Right? The whole state of the church. I'm not saying the state of the church is a false church. I'm saying people in their hearts and in their behavior as Catholics are in a practical false church. He, Deacon Donnelly, seems to be asserting that the church is a false church, masquerading as the real one. Well, there is a false church masquerading as a real one, but it's not what he's talking about. It's a cultural false church, not an actual false church. You understand? Let's go back to the tweet. Let's go back to his post. I'm going to talk to you about a couple things. Sodomites welcome. Well, what are so-called sodomites? I don't like that word. I don't like equating a person with their sin, but it's his word. What are so-called sodomites? Well, they're sinners. Well, naturally, sinners are welcome. Communists, welcome. Well, who's the communist? Who are we talking about here? Mikhail Gorbachev? Who are we talking about? But let's just give it to him, and we'll say the church is very friendly with people who are, pronounced communists. Or maybe he's talking about the church's relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, which is a little shaky. Okay, communists, welcome in the church. Pro-abortion celebrities, welcome. Not sure what that means. Maybe he's not sure either, which is why he's not explicit. Female schismatic archbishops, well, I don't know if you can call the Archbishop of Canterbury a schismatic because she was never Catholic, right? She never had the faith to abandon it. You couldn't technically call her a heretic. I don't know if you could technically call her an archbishop. But what do you expect the Holy Father to do? Be mean to her? Not speak with her? Not try to find common ground with her? And what's the common ground for? It's not so that, the Holy Father can get along with the so-called Archbishop of Canterbury. What's the getting along for? For mending fences, for building bridges, for building avenues of approach, whereby the people who are Anglican can find it in their hearts to be a little bit more open to the truth of Catholicism. You do that through a relationship. You don't do that by throwing the truth at them. You do that through a relationship. So what do we expect the Holy Father to do here? be mean to the Archbishop? Talk smack about Anglicans? What do we expect? What do we expect the pastor of all Christians, Catholic or not, what do we expect the pastor of all Christians to do there? Adherents of false religions, welcome. Same thing, same point I made just a moment ago. Now Freemasons, welcome. But Catholics of the SSPX are unwelcome. Now, a lot of people might look at some of these things and say, well, it's true. We do seem to be very gay-friendly lately. Well, it's true. We don't tell communists they're going to go to hell. Or we don't say or do anything that kind of signals to people communism is a problem. It is incompatible with the Catholic faith, with the Christian faith. I don't know what the pro-abortion celebrities thing means, but can the church be any clearer that abortion is evil? I mean, can it be any clearer than it is? I don't understand the gripe there, but okay. Adherents of false religions. So the pattern you should see here is, first, all of these things have emotional value, right? Sodomites, that's true. We do seem very gay-friendly lately. Communism is evil, so that's true. Pro-abortion, yes, abortion is so evil. Oh my God, why are we being friendly with pro-abortion celebrities? Which celebrities? I don't know, but Deacon Donnelly says so. Deacon Donnelly says we're friendly with pro-abortion celebrities, so it must be true, and that really is terrible. You know, I love the church, and I love the Holy Father. I have no problem with Vatican II, but that really is terrible. Female schismatic archbishops, and so on. All of these things have emotion. I also think that the Holy Father should build a relationship with, in this case, the Archbishop of Canterbury, but I do wish he had been a little bit more Catholic-y in how he did that, but whatever. You know, in the course of my time as an evangelizer and educator, I understand the Holy Father is trying to build relationships. The way he builds them is going to be different from how I think those should be built, right? Maybe definitely build a relationship, but definitely come waving a Catholic flag, at least a little bit. At least hold it out there, the Catholic flag. But anyhow, let's continue. All these things have emotional value. And because they have emotional value, we are not led to think of them critically and with precision. Do you understand the methodology here? Deacon Donnelly absolutizes all of these things. They're absolutely a problem. Well, if you look at them only emotionally, then yes, they are absolutely a problem. No questions asked. But by the time he gets to the SSPX, he's like, nothing to see here. He doesn't want you to pay attention to the fact that the SSPX committed a canonical crime, a very serious canonical crime. He doesn't want you to think that. He absolutizes everything here at the top, but then he plays fast and loose with this thing here at the bottom. Red flag, folks, that means somebody's lying. If you want to absolutize this, then you have to absolutize that. Here's how we approach this with precision. Sodomites, welcome. Well, all of these things on the list are welcome. But what does welcome mean? See, we're absolutizing the word welcome. What does that mean? You can come into the church, receive all the sacraments, no problem, no problem, no problem. You don't have to change your life. The gospel doesn't apply to you. As long as you feel good about what you're doing, you're golden. Is that what the church is doing? Certainly not. Of course not. Of course. Listen, I have known even slightly more left-leaning, not parishes, but certainly pastors and I'll give you one example. In my home parish where I grew up, not as I was growing up, but much later in life, like in my early 20s. Yeah. After my favorite priest and spiritual director got reassigned, we got a new parochial vicar. I would say he was left-leaning. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. In fact, there are several people I know whose judgment I kind of trust who also saw him that way. Okay, fine. I knew someone who went to that parish because he wanted to, I guess, legitimize his relationship with his live-in girlfriend. They had been living together for, 5 to 10 years, and they were considering getting married in the Catholic Church. You know what this left-leaning priest said to him? We can't even consider that until one of you moves out. That's a pretty hard line. right? That's a pretty hard line. From a left-leaning, I'm very confident he was a left-leaning priest, okay? So when we look at these words, this one is welcome and that one is welcome and that one is welcome, well, it may seem like that emotionally, but in real life, in reality, it does not work out that way. There are some priests who are so left-leaning that they do tend to diminish the requirements of the church. My experience, that is very, very rare. That is very, very rare in my experience. It has happened in my experience, but it is very, very rare. All of these people are indeed welcome, but they have to abide by certain terms. You're gay, yes, come to church. You're still living with your same-sex partner, yes, come to church. But I ask that you don't receive Holy Communion because the teaching of the church is ... That happens. So we might wince and cringe when we see a same-sex couple in the pews at Mass because, of course, they're welcome, just like you're welcome as a sinner and I'm welcome as a sinner. And our sins are different from theirs, but we're all sinners, right? But that is not to say that all sinners are welcome and the law of the church doesn't matter, Scripture doesn't matter, the teaching of the church doesn't matter. That in no way applies, whether we're talking about sodomites or communists or pro-abortion, yada, 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 okay? So Deacon Donnelly plays a lot, very fast and loose with the word welcome and with the subjects of these charges. But then once he gets down to the SSPX, nothing to see here. This is just a good, wholesome, old-school Catholic order. They celebrate the Mass of the ages that countless saints attended, which have made them a saint, and the holy and the sacred and the sanctus and SSPX, but they're unwelcome and excommunicated. Well, let's pause for a second. Let's approach that with the same precision. The church had been making overtures to the SSPX for decades. Not once, not twice, four or five times, like major overtures. And the SSPX just sat there and said, okay, what else you got? Another overture? Okay, I'll consider that one. What else you got? What else and just sat there and did nothing to reconcile with the church. Nothing. Until ultimately, in these past few months, in July, they decided to consecrate bishops without a papal mandate. That is a canonical crime. The church did not sit around, as the SSPX had done. The church didn't sit around and say, you go ahead and try it, tough guy, see what happens. The church did not do that. The church reached out at least 3 times, imploring the SSPX, don't do this, let's sit down and talk. The SSPX said, nah, what else you got? No, what else you got? Nah, what else you got? And went and did it anyway. In clear, bold defiance, going so far as to live stream the consecration. But we're not supposed to think about that when we look at this post. Catholics of the SSPX are unwelcome and excommunicated, but you let gay people come in. Well, gay people and all other sinners or people of different political backgrounds have to follow the law of the church, have to go to Mass. If they're baptized Catholics, they have to go to Mass every Sunday and so on. No one is saying we're suspending the rules for you. And also, no one is saying you should be burned at the stake. When we get here, you know what? The rules apply to the SSPX too. The rules apply. They broke the rule canonically. The other thing is some of the, let's say, I hate to say it, but sodomites, because it's his word, gay people, welcome. The thing about certain classes of people, whether they're sinners or people who are on the political left, whatever, we can't read their hearts. You know, it's easy to say, you know, if you support abortion, you shouldn't be receiving communion. Well, I agree with that. The problem from the church's perspective is you don't know that the person did not repent of that sin last week. You don't know that. You don't know that they didn't repent of that sin 5 minutes ago. You don't know if this person, let's say it's a politician presenting themselves for Holy Communion. You don't know what conversations have been taking place between them and their pastors. You don't know if none has taken place. You don't know if they've, repented of their error and went to confession and confess. You don't know this when they come up for communion. What a priest should do when such a person comes up for communion, I'm not saying, because it's too complicated and I don't want to get involved in that. I do agree, though, that they shouldn't be receiving Holy Communion. But do you understand what I'm saying? That action and consequence depend on factors we cannot see, we do not know about. The SSPX is different because what they did is it's literally a canonical crime. There's no question about it, right? With some sin, let's say it's a man and a woman living together. You don't know if they are living as brother and sister. Is it likely that they're living as brother and sister? Maybe it's not likely, but again, you don't know. The church doesn't deal in maybes. The church deals in what it knows to be the truth. You don't know how this man and woman are living together. You just know that they are living together. You don't know that they're committing sin together. You can suspect all you like, but you don't know. With the SSPX, there is no mystery, right? They committed a canonical crime. They consecrated bishops without a papal mandate. That's a canonical crime. There's no mystery there. Why did the church act on that, but doesn't act on pro-abortion Catholic politicians? Because there's no mystery here. Sometimes there's mystery surrounding, let's say it's a same-sex couple. Let's say it's mystery surrounding someone who's an avowed communist. You don't know what's actually gone on in their hearts. You don't know what's going on in that moment. Maybe in that moment, they're still communists, right? In whatever moment that you encounter them. Maybe they're still communists, but in their hearts, they've been reconsidering. You don't know. You can't act on something you don't know. With the SSPX, we know they committed a canonical crime. They didn't even hide it. They live streamed it. They broadcast it. But do you see how without an attitude of intellectual and spiritual precision, you can fall into that rabbit hole? Deacon Donnelly appears to have. You can fall down that rabbit hole. That fellow who was saying, it's heresy that we don't use, that it's heresy that the Novus Ordo is in English. First of all, that was like the third or fourth time that he demonstrated that he does not know what heresy means. He does not know what apostasy means, but he's educating Catholics on YouTube. Okay. That person fell down a rabbit hole too and is falling down and deeper into that rabbit hole at light speed. Deacon Donnelly is so far down the rabbit hole that he went and blocked the Catholic Firebrand. Boy, was that his mistake. I had never had any experience with that guy, any encounter with that guy. We didn't exchange messages. No, I have no idea who the hell that is. But lucky for him, he came across one of my posts on Twitter, apparently, and just preemptively blocked me. And then there was one person, when I said that, because I wrote a post saying, I don't even know who this guy is, and he blocked me. Somebody else saw that post and said, well, I trust everything Deacon Nick says, so if he blocked you, then I'm blocking you too. And then there was somebody on Facebook, Firebranded FM on Facebook. There was somebody on Facebook who unfollowed me. I have no idea why. And even took the time to send a direct message just to tell me, I've unfollowed you. Okay. And I even said to him, what do you want me to do with that information? And he didn't respond. Okay. I mean, my feelings aren't hurt. I don't take it personal. I don't understand this. Anyway, so you have to be careful, folks. Don't go down a rabbit hole. You have to have a good Catholic attitude, and that happens in 3 steps, okay? Step 1, knowledge. You have to know the truth in order to live it. You have to live it in order to become what it is, in order to become like God, right? So knowledge is important. That's the important first step. What goes into our minds comes out of our wills. You cannot do the faith, the truth, whatever, if you don't know it first. So knowledge is the first important thing. And that's where you have to be really careful, because there's a lot of information on the internet. Not a lot of it is the truth. Most of it sounds very much like the truth. A lot of it that sounds like the truth is voiced by people who are well-intentioned, but they're wrong and they don't understand how wrong they are. Like that guy talking about the Council of Trent did not understand how wrong he was. The thing that troubles me about that, though, is I showed him objectively where his arguments are flawed and wrong, and he still continued with his argument anyway. That's very troubling. Anyway, so a lot of folks on the internet are not giving you the right information. Some of them are innocent. They don't realize they're lying to you. They don't realize they're communicating a lie, something that's untrue. And then there are many of those, even in independent Catholic media, who know that they're stretching the truth. So they're stretching it so far that it's actually a lie. There's maybe a couple of them who don't realize they're doing it, but most of them realize they're doing it. Some of the most popular and prominent independent Catholic media podcasts that I won't name, there are a couple out there who I'm confident they know they're bullshitting you. And then there are a couple whose BS artistry is masterful and they're hugely popular, and they don't even realize that their whole shtick is bullshit artistry. And sadly, the hundreds of thousands of people who watch or listen to them, they don't realize it either. Unbelievable. So step one is sound intellectual property and custody of your thoughts. Okay, sound intellectual property. Get the truth, get the facts. Step two, related to that, it's not really a step two, but it is related to that. You have to approach knowledge with precision, not with an axe, but with a scalpel. You have to approach knowledge with precision. Okay? Because we live in a time, and I say this a lot, we live in a time when when lies look very much like the truth. Folks, the father of lies is always going to try to put lies into the human order, into the human culture. Okay? It used to be, eat the fruit and you will be as God. It used to be, there's a spirit that lives in that tree and you should worship it. It used to be, killing isn't wrong. Sometimes it's rude, but sometimes it's necessary even if it is rude. Well, now, 2,000 years into Christianity, the devil still wants to put lies out there. He still wants to pull people away from God. But the old lies don't work like they used to, although some of them have been rewrapped and repackaged. Eat the fruit and you will be as God. That lie still happens, but now it's repackaged. It comes off as in other ways. But worship the spirit in that tree. Or killing sometimes is appropriate if somebody has really ticked you off. Lies like that. Those are hard to sell now. So now the way he injects lie, deception, poison into the human culture is by telling lies that look just like the real truth. So you have to approach your knowledge with precision and great care. And that's a muscle you have to build. It's not going to happen overnight. So don't think to yourself, well, I see this post and I really agree with it, kind of viscerally, kind of emotionally, I really agree with it. I know I'm supposed to think of this precisely, but no, I'll do the precision tomorrow. Then that means you're never going to do it. That's a muscle you have to build. It doesn't happen overnight. And that means you have to deny yourself and deny yourself and deny yourself the comfort of encountering a claim or an idea that in your emotions you want so badly for that to be true. But you have to deny yourself that comfort and say, but is it true? I want it to be true so badly, but is it true? The church erred with Vatican II. I wanted so badly for that to be true. You have no idea. You have no idea the amount and level of self-denial I had to go through to really honestly look at the documents of Vatican II and see them as the church sees them instead of how I wanted to see them. Self-denial. Approaching knowledge with precision is a muscle you have to build. It does not happen overnight. So get on it. The third thing is you have to have a good attitude that receives the truth. A good attitude that receives the truth, let's just say, let's keep it local to the church. A good attitude that receives the truth understands first, if the church teaches it, it is the truth. Even if I don't like it, even if I don't understand it, even if it's confusing, if the church teaches it, it must be the truth. So I have to do the work of understanding it. I have to do that work. I had to go through this a lot with Pope Francis during his pontificate. There were several times where he voiced his personal catechesis, in his gatherings there in St. Peter's. And I thought, man, damn, that's a home run. That's a home run. And then there were some times where I said, oh, come on, Holy Father, come on. But now that's not to say that everything that leaves a pontiff's lips is the truth, right? But if they're speaking magisterially, I have to trust that they're telling something true. When John Paul II because when John Paul II issued Theology of the Body, that happened during his Wednesday audiences or whatever those are called in the Vatican when he comes out and he gives his catechesis. That's how that happened first. It wasn't always a printed book, right? There were a lot of people who probably heard that catechesis and just wanted to shake their heads, but they had to deny themselves. We all have to deny ourselves that comfort and say, maybe what he's saying is the truth. So you have to have a good attitude toward the truth. Part of having a good attitude toward the truth is to understand that truth is a real thing and we don't get to invent it. We have to conform ourselves to it when we encounter it. We do not get to invent it. Well, I know the church teaches this, but I think ... We don't get to invent the truth. And believe me, you do not want that responsibility. You have to have a good attitude toward the truth in order to receive it. It takes humility. Sometimes it takes pain. But whoever told you that becoming like God would be easy, lied to you. The third step is to put into practice the truth you have come to encounter. You have to put that into practice. That doesn't just mean feeding the hungry. That's an obvious one, right? Yeah, I should spend more time feeding the hungry. Yeah, I should give more money to the poor. Oh, okay, those are great. But what about being kinder to your spouse? When your spouse really gets under your skin? When you think to yourself, boy, I hate that son of a bitch sometimes. Let's say you're a woman, right? Because usually I don't think it's men who use that language. I hate that son of a bitch sometimes. He's lazy, he's a bum, this and that. And maybe all of these things that you're feeling about your spouse, maybe they're based on true things, but they themselves are not true. Is your spouse, is your husband a lazy bum? Or is it that he's usually diligent and sometimes he's not? And it's the sometimes that he's not that you're focusing on. When you get those feelings, right? Or let's say you're a man who's married and you think, your wife is like just a harpy and she's always on my case, or her cooking sucks, or I don't know, whatever negative thing. I don't mean like an occasional passing negative thing, but I mean things that consistently show up for you, right? Usually the devil is putting these things in your ear. Usually it's the devil putting these things in your ear. And they may be based on true things, but what you're saying in your head about them is not the truth. How you're perceiving them is not the truth. It is not the truth. Okay? When you get these feelings, act on the truth that you have come to know. Push against the lie. When you get these feelings, say something nice to your spouse. Tell your spouse, I love you. Tell your spouse, I'm sorry if sometimes I'm not exactly who you want me to be, but I want you to know I love you and I want to make you happier every day. What's wrong with that? Random moments, maybe bring your wife home some flowers. I don't know. But push against it. So acting on the truth you have come to know isn't always just feeding the hungry, giving money to the poor. Sometimes it's much more localized, much more immediate, right? Maybe there are times when you aren't diligent. Push against that and do something extra. for your wife, for your kids, whatever. You understand? It's not just about married couples. I'm talking about localizing and a sense of immediacy for how you can put into practice the truth you have come to encounter, and through a good interior attitude you have come to accept, even if you don't quite like it. You understand? Come to know the truth, approach it with precision, careful scrutiny, right? Especially if it's a claim that you don't know if it's true or not, right? Let's say it's not an objective truth, but it's a claim and you're not sure if it's true or not. Approach it with scrutiny, approach it with precision, and then have a good attitude toward the truth. Let's say it's a claim that when you approach it with scrutiny and precision, you decide that's not actually true. Then consider what is true and make that part of your interior understanding. Consider what is true, right? Have an attitude to receive it, right? And then put it into practice when you can. Very, very important. That's how you insulate yourself from the rabbit hole. Okay, let's go to the chat room real quick. Damn it. People have been chatting it up in the chat room, but I haven't said even hello to anybody. I'm trying to be a little less distracted, even if it means I have to come off, I'm sorry, a little bit more rude. So hello again to Elizabeth in the chat room. Check her out, Warriors for Life on YouTube. Hello to Erwin. Welcome back, my friend. And he says, woohoo, made another live, barely. Yeah, and I think you're making it to a good one today, too. Welcome aboard. Thank you for joining me. And Atrophy, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thank you for pointing out. He says, thank you for pointing out, or she. He says, they say, thank you for pointing out what is apparently not obvious to many people regarding the public role of the Holy Father. Yes, the Holy Father is the pastor. Really, he's the pastor of all souls, but in particular, he's the pastor of all the Christian faithful, whether they acknowledge him or not, whether they are Catholic or not. And so, just as your parish pastor has to do, there are things you have to pastor souls, and you don't do that by being John the Baptist. Maybe past pontiffs did. Maybe they enjoyed a different kind of culture where you could do that. Today, you have to be much more stealthy. Let's put it that way. Sometimes you can't be an efficient pastor of souls by being John the Baptist. Sometimes you have to be Jesus Christ at the well, not Jesus Christ cleansing the temple. Although sometimes I would like to see a little bit of that too. But, your mileage may vary. Erwin says, I can think of a lot of things I wish were more Catholic-y these days. Yeah, man, me too. Mass of the Ages is completely a marketing term. It really is. Artrophy, whatever says. He says, or she. Here I go down that rabbit hole again. They say Mass of the Ages is completely a marketing term. It really is a marketing term because the Mass of the Ages is the Novus Ordo, and it is the TLM. Because those are forms of the liturgy, but the liturgy itself is not its form, it's its substance, it's its essence. And there we're talking about the Roman Rite, the Mass of the Ages. This Mass is older than your Mass, and therefore it is the Mass of the Ages. Ridiculous. Tell me you don't understand liturgy without telling me you don't understand liturgy. This is the Mass of the Ages, and yours is not. Okay, thank you for that. Shellback Bo says, hi all. Damn it, I hit the wrong button. Hi all. Hello, Shellback Bo. He says he just woke up. And a lot of people are suspicious to be proven fact. A lot of people take their probable suspicions to be proven fact. Very, very easy to do. Because a lot of people in the church are led by their emotions instead of by their reason. This is a secular illness that has crept into the church because all of us live in the secular culture. We've, to greater or lesser degrees, have contracted that virus where we are led by our emotions instead of by our reason. Catholics, you have to be sharper than that. You have to, especially today, you have to be much, much sharper than that. Do not be led by your emotions. However good a truth claim may make you feel, do not be led by your emotions. That's what the devil wants you to do. That is not the way of the saints. Continuing on. Discernment has never been more important, Erwin says. Oh, big time, my friend. Big time. Discernment has never been more important. And I'm telling you, folks, it's because the devil disables Catholics by making them unable to comprehend and discern truth. He's not disabling practicing Catholics by turning you into atheists or Satan worshipers. He's disabling practicing Catholics by making you unable to discern the truth. Take my word for it and take my advice. You have to be sharper than that. Hello to Chris of St. Patrick. He's also a member of my YouTube channel. Thank you, brother, for being a supporter, and thank you for showing up. He says, hello, TJ. Yo, chat. Yeah. TJ, he's a trifle. Don't know what that means. He's a trifle. That must have been in reference to somebody I was mentioning in the course of the show. I'm not sure who he's talking about. And Crusader Nolan says, hello. I think I know Crusader Nolan. Not personally, but I think Crusader Nolan is like an old school fan. I think. And happy to see you here, period, or happy to see you here, comma, again. God bless you, Nolan. So let me take a second before we get into the next phase of this episode. I got to talk to you about a couple of interesting things, and I swear I'm not going to take long, okay? First, I want to encourage you again to join my YouTube channel. Not just subscribe, but do click like and subscribe and tell that damn algorithm that this content means something to you, and so it might mean something to somebody else. That's how the algorithm gets that signal. When you tap like, when you drop a comment, when you subscribe, and so on, okay? The other thing is, separate from just subscribing, consider becoming a YouTube channel member, a member of my YouTube channel. I call it the Inner Circle. You get exclusive videos, exclusive posts in the community. I feel like I spelled hole wrong. How Catholics fall down the rabbit hole. H-O-L-E. Definitely it's not W-H-O-L-E, but why does the word hole there on my screen look wrong? I don't know. Anyway, so there are two plans. Okay, the main plan is all the main benefits. It's $1.99. If you subscribe on your phone, YouTube adds another fee there where I think it becomes $3.99, but I'm not getting that extra dollar. YouTube is. Okay, so it is $1.99. If you subscribe on your phone, YouTube adds an extra fee. If you want that $1.99 price point, go to a computer, log in through the YouTube website, go to my channel and join that way. Then you're going to get the $1.99, okay? There's the second plan is basically for people who just want to support a little bit more, help me pay some of these bills. YouTube is free, folks, but it's not free to produce this content, okay? So if you want to support a little bit more, I think the higher plan is $4.99, okay? And it's largely the same benefit as the $1.99 plan, okay? I'm being very honest with you. But really, YouTube requires that I have two plans. So from my perspective, the main plan is $1.99. And because I have to have two plans, I added that $4.99 plan for the people who say, yeah, I want these benefits, but I have a little bit more money that I can help you with. So let me subscribe to the $4.99 plan. And a few people have done that, and I'm really grateful to you. Okay? Consider that. You'll find the link here in the description on this live stream and everywhere else in the galaxy. Become a member of my Inner Circle. If you become a member of my Inner Circle on YouTube, I will give you a subscription to the Inner Circle at firebranded.fm. Okay, and I'm not going to explain how I do that. I'm just going to send, when every cycle where I do that, you'll see a notification in my channel community giving you a link to fill out this form, and I'll upgrade your account and so on. I'm not going to get into that now. Speaking of firebranded.fm, Firebranded.fm is a very important component to my apostolate. Okay, the apostolate is twofold. It's the articles and it's the broadcast. When I say this is a Catholic commentary war machine built for impact, you're only getting half of that impact from my podcast. So I encourage you, make friends with Firebranded.fm. Also, listen very closely, okay? Also, one of the other things you get, by the way, on Firebranded.fm are things that I call video blogs and stuff. It's a good place to become familiar with. But here's the important thing. I'm positioning my website to where everything that I do in this apostolate can be done on the website, including live streaming, chatting, stuff like that. Do you know why? Because I cannot have, right now, the apostolate is in a place that I'm not comfortable with, in that it entirely relies on social media platforms, including this one. I'm not comfortable with that. I have to say, YouTube has been very fair with me and with my content. I don't do very well on YouTube, and I think that's just on me, right? What I'm doing here doesn't click with the majority of people on YouTube. Fine. But YouTube, of all of the platforms, YouTube, I have to say, has given me a fair shake. Okay? But what happens if tomorrow I say something that's just a little bit irritating to somebody and they report this happened to me on TikTok one time. When your apostolate relies entirely on the benevolence of social media, which as of now mine does, it's not what I wanted, but it's how it became. In the blink of an eye, you can be turned off. I'm positioning Firebranded.fm to be so that my apostolate is insulated from any of those risks, where the apostolate will still be on social platforms and stuff, but also its heartbeat will be at the website. So don't think of it as just, I know most podcasters, they have a website that's just because we have to have one, but they don't really do anything with their website, which is understandable. That's not me. I do stuff with my website. The website, by design, is the other half of the impact of this Catholic commentary war machine. Firebranded.fm, become friends with it. Okay, become friends with it. Because I'll give you one example. I'm trying to build it up to where I can do some live streams from there, which will not have any oversight at all. So I can say whatever I need to say the way I need to say it. It's not going to be much different from what I do here, but you know. So Firebranded.fm, consider it. Okay, that's enough of the commercials. Oh, one last thing. I started, and this is going to take like 30 seconds. I started a WhatsApp channel for Firebranded. If you use WhatsApp and if you're interested, you will find the Firebranded channel there on WhatsApp. I guess just search for it. I think I'm the only Firebranded on the WhatsApp channels. I will also, it's not there now, but I'll put a link to it in this episode's description. It is not there right now, but I will add it later. Okay? The thing about the WhatsApp channel is there's no algorithm. If you subscribe to the channel, every time I post an update, here's something that I just finished publishing, here's a new episode, here's what's going on. Every time I post an update, you get the notification in WhatsApp. There's no algorithm. A lot of publications are going in that direction because a lot of publications are finding that they just can't pierce through the damn algorithms, plural. So I'm like the next, I'm one of many, very many who have decided to try to get around that with things like a WhatsApp channel. Okay? All right. Now, if you just give me a second, folks, we're going to go into phase 2 at this stage. And there's just a couple of things I have to get up on my screen. Just bear with me. This is where I would have ordinarily inserted a commercial break. We'll be back right after this. Come on! Commercial break. And then TJ Haynes fades back into action. And we're back. This is Firebranded, and I thank you again for joining me once again. Let's talk about this. So very interesting. I don't even know how I encountered this, but it was quite by accident. Scottish bishop excommunicates rector of religious order after illicit ordination. I saw that and I said, okay, SSPX, but I thought, no, wait, this looks different. So I'm going to tell you about this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the order involved here. And what's surprising to me is I had never heard of this order in my life. But when I started, like for instance, I sent channel members a preview of what I'm going to talk about in this segment. Since posting that for the subscribers, you have to be a subscriber to have gotten it. Since posting that, there are people who got back to me and said, oh yeah, I'm familiar with them. I used to watch this stuff all the time. 3 people have gotten back to me saying, oh yeah, I used to watch this stuff all the time. One person on Twitter said, oh yeah, I used to love that order, or he might still love the order. I don't know. But I was like, damn, I have never heard of these people. The story is a little bit Twilight Zone. Let's get to the first part of the story, the excommunication of this bishop. Scottish bishop excommunicates rector of religious order after an illicit ordination. Bishop Hugh Gilbert of Aberdeen, Scotland, has pronounced Father Michael Mary Sim, rector of the Congregation of the Sons of the Most Holy Redeemer, to be excommunicated from the Catholic Church. Regrettably, I find Father Mary guilty of the This is a quote for those who are just getting the audio. Regrettably, I find Father Michael Mary guilty of the charges brought against him, most notably that of schism. He is therefore declared to be excommunicated, dismissed from the ecclesiastical office, and prohibited from the celebration of Mass or the other sacraments, Gilbert said. Bishop Gilbert's statement came after Father Sim's participation in an illicit ordination, which the bishop described as a clear break with the church. So the story is very simple. You've heard about it before. You heard it with the SSPX, right? They illicitly consecrated a bishop, and so those involved were excommunicated. Here, same thing. The rector of the order, or I guess the head of the order, was made a bishop illicitly, and those involved were excommunicated. And I thought, boy, that's so crazy, because that's a pretty big deal, right? And I thought, this is so crazy that I have never heard of these people at all. This is a big deal. Sure, I heard about the news story, but this news story should tell you that there was a problem brewing with this order already, right? And therefore, I should have heard about them, but I hadn't. So I did some digging. Who is this order? What is this order? It's funny because I was doing this digging because I wanted to do a short form podcast about it, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, just talking about it. But the deeper I dug, I'm like, what the hell? So let me give you the backstory, because you might be wondering what I was wondering. What is this order? Give me just a second. Rector of, what is this? The Congregation of the Sons of the Most Holy Redeemer. And I thought, are they a real religious order? Or are they just like a group of lay people and the priest is like helping them out sacramentally? It's a real religious order. Okay, so what's their history? Have they ever had friction with the church before? Have they ever been corrected before? And the more I looked into these questions, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a big fat ball of crazy. So I'm going to read you some of what I dug up. The Sons of the Most Holy Redeemer is a small, isolated community. They think they topped out at like 30 members at one point. It's very small, okay? And their home base is Golgotha Monastery in the Orkney Islands, attached to the pre-Vatican II Latin Mass. You might have guessed that. They kind of live a monastic life, okay? They were founded in 1988, with the blessing of, this might shock you, the blessing of Bishop Lefebvre, the head of the SSPX. By 88, he was already excommunicated. Founded in 1988 by Father Michael Mary Sim, that's the same guy who was just excommunicated. He was the head of the order, also the founder of the order. Founded in 88 by Michael Mary Sim. Father Michael Mary Sim was a Redemptorist priest before all this, and he broke off to start a traditionalist offshoot alongside of an SSPX seminarian. So there's already SSPX DNA in this, alongside an SSPX seminarian and a few of their followers. They never started in the mainstream. They began outside of canonical good standing. Okay, that makes better sense, actually. So the founder, who's responsible for an order that already saw excommunications, now he is joined in spirit with the founder of another order. I would call this like a mini SSPX, where an excommunication now has also taken place following the SSPX one in July. Okay. Now, at some point, they found their way, I think, to not Australia, but like New Zealand. And they opened, I suppose, a monastery there. Oh, wait, let me back up. There was a point in their timeline where they reconciled with the church, okay, which I think was in 2002. Give me just a second so I can give you the right information. Benedict XVI freed off the line. 2008. Okay. After Benedict XVI's motu proprio, freeing up the Latin Mass, which was an overture to groups like the SSPX. It wasn't just to free it up for everybody. It was that, but it was mainly an overture to the SSPX and groups like theirs. That was in 2008, okay? That was in 2007. So in 2008, this order reconciled with the church, and they were then considered in canonical good standing. Okay? In 2012, Bishop Hugh Gilbert, same guy, the same bishop that we just talked about, Bishop Hugh Gilbert formally erects them as a legitimate religious institute. So for at least a decade, they were not only in good standing, but I feel like they were being glazed a little bit. Okay? Everything went well. Everything was going well. The turning point started in New Zealand in 2017, okay? It's kind of a hinge moment here. They expanded to Christchurch, that's a diocese in New Zealand, in 2017. They celebrated masses, they gave homilies. They also did excommunications. They also did exorcisms. There were people who accused them of assigning very strange and very harsh spiritual penalties, okay? Or penances, you might say. But I would say they're a little bit too weird even to be considered penances. They were known to be harsh. They were known to be very strict. They were known to be very rigid. There were people who were part of that group who later came out and said, things were just awful there. It was like a nightmare in my life. The penances were harsh. The penances were bizarre. Sometimes he made us lick the floor, lick the sign of the cross on the floor as a penance, things like this. Now, eventually, I'm going to show you a video here in a minute. There was a news report done on them that I'm going to show you some of. Hopefully, YouTube doesn't flag me for it, but I am offering commentary on it, so it is fair use, but let's see, okay? The thing with this news report is this. This is from NewsHub. NewsHub no longer exists, okay? I was actually lucky I found this video. NewsHub no longer exists. I don't know what that publication or what that news station was all about, but I can tell you this video I wouldn't trust entirely because there are some things in it that seem a little sensationalized. Folks, sometimes you do get that in legitimate news, right? Sometimes they do try to sensationalize a story a little bit. Sometimes if they're interviewing someone who had a bad experience somewhere, they might say, try to emphasize how terrible it was that he made you lick the floor. Well, he only made me do that once. I know, but emphasize, and it only lasted a second. But emphasize how terrible it was, okay? Action. Yeah, and then he made me lick the floor. He made me lick the sign of the cross in the floor, and it was horrible. It was terrible. It made me cry. It made me sick. I don't know why a man of God would make you do such a thing. So they do, sometimes in news, they do make you twist the knife a little bit. But this one was weird. This one went so far as to say, this person didn't want to be identified, so he shot her from the back of the head, not with a gun, mind you. He shot her from a camera, and then here's what she had to say. I don't understand. It's the devil that acts in the shadows. God acts in the light. It was almost like literally like that. I'm going to let you have a link to this video, and you can see it for yourself. It's very long, so I'm not going to play the whole thing. But there are little things like that in here that make me believe there's likely some truth in this. Okay, there's likely some truth in this, but you do You do have to take it with a grain of salt. Okay? So I'm just going to play a little bit of this for you, if I can.
Most Holy Redeemer, the volunteer fireman loves the Latin Mass, and
Latin
for 10
Mass.
years he followed the teachings of Fathers Anthony Mary and Michael Mary.
What counts for eternal salvation is serving God and doing His will.
But the story is not one of salvation, love, and joy.
Understand, it's a secular news agency. It's a secular news agency doing what might be considered a hit piece on a traditional Catholic organization. So consider the source right away. Okay? It's going to be a little bit dramatic. See past that haze. Try to look at the claims. And what did I say? Precision, right? Precision. And here you also have to exercise a little bit of intuition. What likely sounds true and what likely sounds a little bit editorialized, okay? So be attentive.
Make your child slip and knock his head and cry right at the moment of the consecration.
There's definitely an undercurrent of fear and anxiety the whole time.
Mark Robinson was a brother with the Sons for 6 years. He says if you contradicted Michael Mary, you'd be punished or given a penance. Many times he was instructed to lie on the floor while others stepped over him on the way to dinner.
Another one was making the cross on the floor with your tongue.
Do you mean licking the floor?
Yeah, licking the floor
I'm so sorry.
in the form of a cross with your tongue.
He made you lick the floor? Yeah, that's right. Made me lick the floor. With your tongue? Oh, Jesus. Come on, mate. How else can you lick a floor? With your fingers? With your bloody fingers? I'll tell you, I didn't realize Jason Statham was even Catholic.
Making the cross on the floor with your tongue.
Do you mean licking the floor?
Yeah, licking the floor
That's
in the
right.
form of a cross with your tongue like 3 times.
Mark believes such penances were not about humbling people, but humiliating them.
Do you think you're a bit traumatized when you left?
Oh, big time. It took more than 10 years to sort of get over and heal from a lot of the damage that was done. I mean, my initial thought on getting out of there was this huge sense of relief, like I'd been let out of prison.
Wow.
How would you describe
shadowy
the
image of the
leaders
Blessed
there,
Virgin
Father
Mary?
Michael Mary and Father Anthony Mary?
I describe him as being charismatic, but at the same time, quite controlling.
Margaret attended Mass run by the Sons for several months. She says Father
something that smacks of truth to me there is he might just lick the floor 3 times, sign of the cross. Sign of the cross 3 times on the floor. That 3 times bit, that's a pretty traditional guidance in penance, to do something 3 times, for the Trinity, yada, yada, yada. I believe the lick the floor part because he said he made us do it 3 times. That actually makes it believable. Also, I believe the rector of the order did not deny the floor licking thing. If I recall from my research, he did not deny it. So there's that. It's a very strange order. I should say also, Joe Nolan in the chat room chimed in. He says, News Hub was a New Zealand left-wing news channel. I didn't know that, but I did decide the show was probably left-leaning, but I didn't know the network itself had been. I didn't realize that. Let's just go to a little bit more of this.
Some of my children.
Quite controlling.
Getting in contact with some of my children. And in a way, I feel behind my back.
And against your wishes?
Yes. One of my sons, he went silent, wouldn't speak to us. And then he would say, I'll just see what Father Michael Mary has to say.
Another way she says that...
I got to tell you, as a producer, that sounds rehearsed. Okay? It sounds a little bit acted. Is it possible this is someone's actual account, but they got somebody to act it out? It's possible. Is it possible that's the real person? Possible. But I have to tell you, I believe what is said there, because it is characteristic of extremism that they're very, very controlling, way over any line. whether it's extreme right or extreme left, doesn't matter. For whatever reason, extremists tend to be very controlling, and they are habitual line steppers. So I'm a little suspicious of this delivery and this packaging, but I do believe the account. Now, I want to approach this with some balance. I don't know anything about this order except for what I dug up in the research. The research is objective. I can tell you that. The research is objective. What I gave you was the timeline, right? I didn't give you commentary except for this moment here. So the timeline is objective. My personal opinion of what we see in this video is it is based on truths. Some of it, I think, may be editorialized, but it is based on truths. It's based on normal characteristics we see from real extremists or real extremism. However, let me flip the script on you a little bit, something to keep in mind. To the secular mind, any penance is extreme and weirdo. It's some weirdo thing from the Middle Ages, right? From the Dark Ages. They made you not eat until the sun went down? You had to go the whole day without a morsel until dinner time, and then when you ate dinner, you weren't allowed to eat meat. You had to eat pasta with butter and a little piece of fish for a penance. Understand that. This is a little bit more of a hardcore order, so maybe their penances were a little bit more hardcore, but I have to tell you, the penances were very weird. Licking the floor 3 times? Seriously? I remember stories of, I have to be careful as I share this because I don't remember all the details. It was a nun who was the head of her order or the head of that convent. This is going back to like the Middle Ages or sometime hundreds of years ago, who made her nuns do very weird penances. Like walk on their knees on glass and stuff like that. Like very, very weird penances. And it turned out that nun was possessed. And they didn't realize this for many years. I guess she fell under the microscope because some of her nuns were saying, listen, Father or Bishop, there's some weird stuff going on at that house. Let me tell you what I've experienced. And it turned out, I don't remember the whole story. It's a true story. I don't remember all of the details. But it turned out, this nun, as it turned out, had been possessed. I remember too, they even were able to pinpoint how she had become possessed many years prior. I think it was like an encounter with a witch or something. I don't remember all the details. True story though. I'm not saying people in this order are possessed, but I am saying it's a remote possibility at least. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What this shows us, even if we say, well, this is sensationalized media, and I agree, it is sensationalized media, but what did I tell you? Precision. See past the sensationalism, see past the smoke and the haze, look at what's there, and make the assessment yourself, right? What this shows us is that the more and more extreme we get, the further from God we get. God does not live in the extremes. I'm sorry if you consider yourself a progressive Catholic. I have to tell you, God is not a progressive, and neither is the church. If you consider yourself a very Orthodox Catholic, listen, there's some things that you and I believe that we overlap, but I have to tell you, God is not staunch conservative. He just isn't. God is the whole truth, right? The whole truth. It's we who separate it. We have liberal and conservative. We have not Orthodox, but we have, let's say, conservative and progressive. Let's just keep it simple. We have divisions in the truth. On the left, some of what they believe, whether it's theological left or political left, some of the things they believe are the truth, believe it or not. On the right, some of the things they believe are the truth. But God is not fragmented that way. God is the whole truth. Right? It's we who fragment it. So you're going to find some of it on the left. You're going to find some of it on the right. You can think for yourself which of those two sides has more of the truth. I'm not making a claim. I have some thoughts and belief, but I'm not making a claim. On both sides of the political or theological aisle, they have some of the truth. But we are the ones who have divided it. So to be balanced, to be aligned with the truth, is to reconstitute these fragments of the truth and align yourself with the whole of it. The whole of it. I call that balanced. You might also think of it as orthodox, but it really is a little bit more involved than just orthodoxy. I call it balanced. Okay? The further we get from balance, the further we get from God. What did I say at the top of the show? All truth leads you back to God. All truth is an interaction with God because God is truth, and all truth manifested on the earth, revealed on earth, on purpose or by accident, comes from God. The more extreme we get on the left or on the right, the further away from God we get. Even if you are a very pious person, even if you go to Mass all the time, which happens on the left and on the right, right? People who go to Mass every day. You pray the rosary, this and that. All that is good. All that is laudable. But interiorly, when we depart from the center, from the balance, from the wholeness of the truth, now maybe we don't possess the wholeness of the truth now, but we have an attitude. Remember I said you have to have an attitude receptive to the truth? When you have an attitude receptive to the whole truth, not just truths that make me feel better, you are balanced, right? That means you are balanced. As you go more and more to the margins, you necessarily depart more and more from God, from the nature and essence and personality of God himself. You do depart from the whole of divine revelation. For instance, there are some people who really lean on the fact that Jesus Christ said, you are sons of Satan and you do his father's work. They really lean on the fact that Jesus was so angry, he took the time to forge a whip to cleanse the temple. That's pretty angry. Well, that's a truth. That really happened. But there are people who lean on that and talk constantly about justice, 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 justice. Fires of hell, fires of hell, fires of hell. And then there are people, now that's not how God is. Jesus Christ demonstrated that. And then there are people who are on the other side. Mercy, mercy, mercy. Sin doesn't matter. God understands. That is not what the church teaches, and that is not how God is. So you understand, even if you align yourself with divine revelation, head, right? If you do not have an attitude inclined to the truth, you can take that divine revelation and still turn it into a lie because you don't have an attitude inclined to the truth. And because what you come to know in your head does not fall on a square and balanced and strong interior disposition and attitude, what's the next step? Live the faith you profess, right? Well, what are you living? If you've been giving the truth, understand it wrongly, what comes out of your will? Error, lies, deception, right? What we see in this order is exactly that. I'm sure there were some great things about them. I'm sure. That's probably true. There are probably some good things about them. I'm also sure there was a real problem brewing there. I mean, folks, when I heard about the excommunication, my first thought was there had to be a problem brewing there. That didn't just happen. That's why I went and looked into their history and who they were and who was involved and this and that. So it's important to have this attitude of receptivity to the truth as it is, not as we want it to be. This order, oh, by the way, so this order was in communion with the church, and then I think, I just closed my notes, but I think it was in May, this past May, that they declared themselves sedevacantist. Before that, they were already rejecting teachings from the Holy Father, I believe Francis, and I think also Leo, right? They were expressing deep concern about these teachings and rejecting some of them. And then in May, they declared themselves sedevacantist. Okay? If you would like my notes on this, I will post this as a post-show note at firebranded.fm, which I think I have not yet done. Hang on. Oh, I did, but it's for subscribers only. Okay. Yeah, I did, but it's subscribers only. Anyway, you can always subscribe for $1.99 to Firebranded.fm. But anyway, let me continue with the point. So, what we learned from this is, they were on the outs with the church, then they reconciled with the church, then they were on the outs again, declared themselves sedevacantists in May. First of all, folks, I can tell you, the further to the right you lean, you don't stop where you're at. You absolutely do not stop where you're at when you lean to the left, even. You don't stop where you're at. You progress. You go further, right? You become a little bit more traditionalist, a little bit. I understand not all traditionalists are like crazy. I understand that, okay? But traditionalists, I want to tell you again, I always have to say that. It's not all traditional. I always have to say that. Do you know why? Because everybody knows that traditionalists are tremendous snowflakes. Everybody knows that. When there's even a hint of criticism of traditionalism, traditionalists freak out like a hive of bees, and you just kicked the hive. I understand not all of you are crazy. I understand there are traditionalists out there who are good, kind, nice, normal, rational. I understand that. But understand this. You are siding with a camp that is known in the church to be a little bit cuckoo. And I'll tell you, I'll go one step further before I continue the point I started to make. I know very, very many Catholics who have never in their life heard of a clown mass. They had never heard of it. Forget about never seeing one. They'd never even heard of it. But they've all heard of traditionalism, and none of them have a good opinion of it. Something to consider. Why is the reputation of traditionalism everywhere in the church and generally frowned upon, even by ordinary, good, decent, nice, faithful Catholics? Why does traditionalism have more of a reputation in the church than clown masses? Something for you to consider, and you can do with it as you please. So I understand it's not all traditionalists who are crazy and all this stuff. I got you. But understand this. The more traditionalist you lean, that progression continues. Well, I'm a traditionalist, but I'm not a radical traditionalist. Give it time. Well, I'm a traditionalist, but I'm not a radical traditionalist, and I'm not a sedevacantist. My friends, you think people were born into sedevacantism? Nobody is born into sedevacantism. Most sedevacantists were ordinary old Catholics who lean more and more and more and more to the right, went from Orthodox to traditionalist, and I would say plain old traditionalists are mostly normal, right? They went from Orthodox to traditionalist, from traditionalist to radical traditionalist, from radical traditionalist to sedevacantist, either by declaring themselves sedevacantist or they're sedevacantist in spirit, right? Where they don't reject the Pope, but in their hearts they kind of reject the Pope. They don't reject the Council, they don't reject the Novus Ordo, but in their hearts they kind of do. They're practical sedevacantists. But even practical sedevacantists eventually go over the line. Do you folks think you're any better than Archbishop Carlo Vigano, period? I thought he had a third name. Carlo Marie Vigano, I guess. Do you think any of you are any better than him? He used to be very, very solid. What happened to him? And that's just one name I could mention. So have a good attitude, inclined to the truth, disposed to the truth, in balance, not extreme left or extreme right. In balance. Folks, I'm always having to, and you should do this too, the church and the gospel should always challenge what you think to be the truth. Not just the gospel, but also the church. The church should challenge what you think to be true about immigration. I'm very much, as I've said, a political conservative. I think people who are here illegally should be treated with dignity in all of this. But I'm very much of the mind that you should not be here illegally. There's a reason why we have a legal immigration system. And it's not just so that we can tag people. It's so that we know who's coming to live with us, who's coming to work with us, and so on and so on. There's a reason why we should be able to control the flow who's coming here. And the church is very much aligned with that. Okay? The church is also aligned with be a little bit more lenient about the whole illegal immigration thing. Well, so the church is aligned with both. I'm more aligned with the more conservative view of it, but I have to let myself be challenged by what the church has to say about it, right? So don't just let yourself be challenged by the scripture. Also let yourself be challenged all the time by what the church has to say about what's true. Yeah, there's going to be some crazy ones out there. I'm not talking about individual crazies. I'm talking about the church. The church, not individual crazies within the church. Hashtag German bishops. Lord have mercy. Okay, one last thing I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to make it quick. I always say I'm going to make it quick. I want to talk to you about spiritual fatigue, and I am going to make this quick because this show has gone on a very long time. But before I get into that, just a reminder, consider becoming a paid channel member here at Firebranded. Actually, the channel name is Catholic Firebrand, but the show is Firebranded. And remember to make friends with Firebranded.fm. Folks, you're only getting half the good stuff from the broadcast. You got to get the full impact. Go to Firebranded.fm. Okay, Jesus at judgment is going to ask you if you did that. Did you go, my child, to Firebranded.fm? And if you say no, you've added like 100 years to your time in purgatory. I'm just saying. Father Michael Mary Sim told me so I know it must be the truth. What do you do when you're spiritual fatigue? I'm going to give you one tip. Okay, only one, because this is going to take, this is taking too long. And anyway, let me just give you one tip. What do you do when you're spiritual fatigue? Sometimes it can happen that the cross is a little too heavy for us. We've been doing it a long time. We've been trying and failing and trying and failing. Or maybe we don't feel like we've been failing, but we're just fatigued, right? Or maybe life has got you down and you ask yourself, God, where are you as my life is on fire? I have said that very thing. So believe me, I know how that feels. God, where are you when my life is on fire? Where were you in this moment in my life when all hell was breaking loose? Where were you when this tragic thing happened to me or to someone who I love? Right? You can get frustrated with God, frustrated with the church, frustrated with living the faith. What do you do in times like that? What you do in times like that is going to be the same prescription I would give you if you battle a lot of temptation. And it's simply this: never lose your peace. Never lose your peace. If you get to a point where the practice of the faith is getting heavy to carry for whatever reason, I'll tell you about my experience, and I'm not going to go on and on about it. Hang on a second. Oh, okay. There have been times where I just couldn't take Catholic anymore. Not just because I was like psychologically fatigued from it, but also spiritually fatigued from it. And two, my whole life is basically surrounded by Catholic, right? Because, you know, when you do the work of the church, you work with the church, you have an apostolate, there's more church, and then it's your personal Catholic life. You're surrounded by Catholic. And sometimes it gets to a point where it's like, I just can't take it anymore. Like sometimes I have to stop reading theology, right? Sometimes I'll go for a while not reading theology. I'll just read literature or something. When you get to that point where, for whatever reason, the faith life, the faith experience has tuckered you out, then you've reached a point where you have lost your peace. It's not just fatigue. It's a loss of peace. And sometimes that loss of peace is because you're disappointed in yourself for feeling this way. When you're dealing with a lot of temptation, it's also a loss of peace. When you fall to your temptations, whether it's mortal or venial, doesn't matter. How do you bounce back from that fall? Regret, remorse. I suck. I hate myself, right? Remorse for sin can be healthy, but not to the extent that it robs you of your peace. Peace is very important from the perspective of God. So at times like that, I want you to identify what has caused me to lose my peace. Listen, if you, for instance, fall to a sin, mortal or venial, you need to just carry on as though nothing happened. Okay? Don't stay away from you. Listen, folks, when Adam and Eve sinned, what did they do? They hid, right? Do you ever do that after you have sinned? Do you ever, or maybe not after you have sinned, but when you come to a realization of a sinful pattern you have, do you run and hide from God because you're ashamed? You feel yourself unworthy? Boy, is that a mistake. Boy, is that a mistake. That's what Adam and Eve did. They sinned, and so they hid. You have to carry on as though nothing has ever happened. Don't stop your prayer. In the case of temptation or sin, don't stop your prayers. Don't stop your prayer life. Don't stop going to Mass. If it's a mortal sin, you should probably not go up for communion until you've gone to confession. But don't stop going to Mass. Don't stop talking to God. Don't stop doing your pious routines that are just normal in your life. Right? If you're tuckered out by the faith, okay, I want you to look at the whole tapestry of what your faith life is and ask yourself, where am I losing my peace and why? Identify that and change it. Identify that and change it. It could be, as has happened to me, where, oh God, it could be that, for instance, like the rosary starts to make you crazy. You have to discern that carefully because it could be the devil trying to pull you away from the rosary. But this might be a shocker. If the rosary is normal for you, right, you've been doing a daily rosary, for instance, for a while, and it's one of the friction points that makes your Catholic life a little less peaceful, it's probably not the devil. It's probably just your psychology. You're just tired for whatever reason. Maybe change that part of your routine. Don't just get rid of it. Maybe instead of saying a daily rosary, spend 15 minutes with the Bible every day. Something like that. And I'm not trying to be specific. I'm trying to make a point. Identify what's causing you to lose peace and change it. Even if it's temporary, change it. Change it. If it's the whole ball of wax that's making you lose peace, well, you can't change the whole ball of wax because Mass is in there, right? Praying at least once a day is in that ball of wax. Well, you can't change the whole ball of wax. Okay, then change its shape. Turn it into a square. Change its shape. I've had to do this many times where I had to modulate, where I had to pray less frequently. But I didn't pray less. I prayed less frequently, but I prayed a little longer each time that I did pray. Or, anyway, you get the idea. Sometimes you have to modulate, change the shape of what you're carrying, even if you can't change its weight. Sometimes you have to try a little less hard on the things that you're doing that are extra. Don't try less hard about getting to Mass on Sundays. You have to do that. But maybe you're going every single day and you're praying 30 rosaries a day and you're doing this every day. Okay, maybe do fewer things. Maybe do fewer things. Because folks, you are a body and a soul, right? Understand the desire of your soul. The devil tempts us to every excess, including excesses in piety. Okay? The devil will tempt you to pray 50 rosaries a day because he knows that's going to break you. Why? Why would 50 rosaries a day, just for an example, break you? Because your psychology has limits. Your body and a soul, right? In your soul and your desire, you might want to say 50 rosaries a day, but your psychology has limits. Your psychology has limits. Sometimes your mind needs a break or needs a rest. Sometimes that rest isn't doing less, it's just doing different. And sometimes that rest is doing a little bit less. Not jettisoning the essentials like going to Mass on Sundays, but sometimes you have to respect the fact that God gave you a body and a soul. And sometimes we push ourselves beyond the limitations of that body, the actual appendages in your body. And sometimes we push ourselves beyond the limits of our psychology. Erwin says, 30 rosaries a day sounds like me when I converted. Shellback Bo says, I was told to pick one devotion and get good at it. Don't do all 20. Yeah. Let me repeat that. Shellback Bo said, I was told pick one devotion and get good at it. Don't do all 20. Excellent advice. Pick one devotion and get good at it. Sometimes even devotion, just one devotion may push you past the limitations of your psychology. So pick a small one, right? Some litanies, like the Litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Litany of the Saints, are kind of lengthy. And maybe you're new at all this. Well, maybe don't push yourself that far. Maybe start with the Litany to St. Joseph, which is rather short, but it's very, very good, right? So consider that. In all things, whether it's spiritual fatigue, life fatigue, temptation, guilt for sin, in all things, I am telling you, core and central is this: do not lose your peace. The Holy Spirit acts in peace. The unholy spirit stirs you to despair, to anger, to rage, to self-loathing. God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit operate in the realm of peace. Jesus was always saying, peace to you, peace be with you. Not just because he was a Jew, it's in Scripture for a reason, right? Always operate in the realm of peace, because that's where you're going to find God and the Holy Spirit. That's where the Holy Spirit does his most important work, is in a state of reasonable peace. It doesn't mean you're going to be like floating on clouds, but you understand, reasonable peace. Don't kick yourself when you're down. And don't add to the weight that you're already tired of carrying. Change it up. You're not just a soul with a desire to holiness. You're also a mind and an intellect and a psychology that sometimes can be pushed to the brink, or it's not pushed to the brink, it's just tired. Sometimes giving it a rest means doing less. Sometimes giving it a rest means changing it up. Okay? But the guiding principle is never lose your peace. If you find that you've lost your peace, find where find where that changed or what took it away from you, and reclaim it. Do what you can to reclaim it. Do what you can to reclaim it. The devil wants very badly to rob you of your peace. Very, very badly. But he can't do that. However, he can convince you to surrender it. He cannot steal it from you, but he can convince you to surrender it. Don't let him have it. Damn, I hope you liked this episode, because this one really robbed me of my peace. I'm just kidding. This one was a long one. I will be leaving this episode up, this live stream up. I'm also going to edit it, shave it down, make it available on demand. But until I get to that, which might not be for another couple of days, you'll be able to go back and watch this. Folks, consider becoming a channel member here at my YouTube channel. And please, please, please make friends with Firebranded.fm. Consider signing up for a free account. Consider becoming a paid subscriber, but you don't have to. You can at least subscribe for a free account. I don't spam you or anything, but it puts you it makes you part of the action instead of just being a lurker. Firebranded.fm. This has been Firebranded, and I've been your host, the undisputed technician of the truth, TJ Haynes. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen, and God be with you all. Hope you enjoyed the show. Bye-bye. I did that last bit of goodbye looking at the wrong camera like a dumbass.